Hi all, I'm Cullen Haynes and welcome to Lawyer Lending Live. My next guest is an absolute weapon when it comes to buyer's agency and buyer's advocacy, especially in the realm of Sydney and the wider areas. Been investing himself since the age of 18, and I was joking off air that he only looks like he's 21. Would you please make very welcome my good friend from Universal Buyers Agents, Mr. Gianni Musumeci. Mr. Gianni, how are you, sir?
Cullen, thank you very much. I'm great, thank you. Yeah, thank you for having me on. Really excited.
Mate, it's an absolute pleasure, mate, and very timely because my phone has been blowing up after the RBA decided to raise rates for the 12th time. All these economists said, oh, yeah, they're going to hold them, they're going to hold them. In my mind, I was telling clients that's unlikely because if they're going to try and curb inflation, they're going to rip the Band-Aid off now. Why would they wait? So they did what they said they were going to do. So I would love to ask you, what is happening in your world with all these things going on?
Yeah, look, I'm noticing that there's a lot more demand for property, especially over the last few months. We're not seeing a lot of stock on the market, and we're seeing nationally that listings are down overall, roughly 20%. I'm waiting for the latest monthly data to come out, but last month it's roughly 20% based on the previous year and the 5-year average. We're sitting at 20% fewer properties. And so I'm
Interesting.
seeing a lot more people in general at inspections and auctions overall.
Wow, that's incredible because you would have thought by the logic of rates going up that it would curb the consumer appetite for credit and less people could get approved. Are we seeing more investors come out because they're smelling blood?
Yeah, look, I don't see a lot of opportunity for investors at the moment. They're not seeing a lot of value in the market. And what I'm seeing from the statistics, or CoreLogic released a statistic a couple of months ago around only less than 10% of suburbs are cheaper to buy than rent. So, especially for a lot of cash flow positive investors that are looking for cash flow positive property, there's few and far between property where they don't have to fork out a deficit amount each month to fund the difference between rental and expenses. So there's fewer investor activities. There's less investors in the market to develop as well because the cost of building, fewer construction turnaround time, the difficulty to get a DA application, and then just the relative lack of stock in the market as well. So
Well, we'll talk about that because that lack of stock is a real concern. And I'm talking to clients, they got their pre approval. It's not like they're using it as a gym membership and have it but never use it. They want to buy.
yeah.
But there is the same people going to the same open homes again and again and again because there's this artificial market where, because there's not much stock, there's higher competition going to these same properties. Is that the right? Am I observing that right?
Yeah, look, I mentioned there are a lot more people at inspections. In Sydney's sort of outer suburbs, outer west, I've been to a couple of inspections where there were 50 groups through, yeah, at some locations at certain price points.
Wow.
And then generally, I attend auctions a lot of the time in the sort of inner west, northwest, northern suburbs. And I'm seeing 3, 4, 5 active bidders where auctions are exceeding the price guide by sometimes 15, 20%.
That's incredible. That's incredible.
Mm.
And I guess further to that, what do you think about the recent rate rise? Doesn't matter what everyone else thinks. You, Gianni, 12th rate rise. Mr. Philip Lowe, God bless him, the governor, the governator, as people are calling him, is going out
Yeah.
swinging. What do you think about this recent rate rise?
Yeah, look, I really don't blame the RBA for raising interest rates. It's sort of having a builder and only having a hammer. They can only do so much with it. Okay. Now they've been given a job to curb inflation and get inflation back to that 2 to 3% bandwidth. And the only way that they can do that is with interest rates. I'd actually like to see some fiscal policy changes now around what we can do to curb inflation. Now we sort of know that inflation that's being caused at the moment is around the supply side. So there's a shortage of vacant workers to fill vacant positions. And that's why we're seeing ultra low unemployment. I know, especially in real estate, there's, the cost of building material to build is at a high because there's a lack of stock. There's
Yes.
lack of stock in real estate as well. There's a lateral stock of construction companies because we know construction companies are going out of business left, right, and center. So it's on the supply of goods. And I feel that the government need to step in somehow, make policy arrangements to entice supply to be made up for the slack that we have as well, and also entice investors to get back into the market to make rental properties available to add to the supply, because we know when supply is low and demand is high, that's when we get price growth, especially, which is
Correct.
general economic terms, not just real estate terms.
No, that's economics 101 from my
Yeah.
MBA days, let me tell you. And we've got a few guests of the show. Mina Abel Sayed, a legend of law in his own right. Hello, Mina. Thank you for joining. And Rizwan Chowdhury, a regular as well. Hi, thanks Rizwan for joining. We put the title of this show, "Why Are Property Prices Going Up?" And I think it's, it may be clickbaity, but it's a great question. Why are property prices still going up with rates going up, Gianni? What is going on?
Yeah, look, I feel that because of the demand and the additional migration that's coming into the market, we're seeing property prices come up because people are willing to sacrifice that little bit extra to beat the competition to get into property. That's the first
Yes.
part. There's more demand, okay? Lack of supply, more demand. The second part is I feel because inflation has come down somewhat. I know it's not at 8%. We're sort of sitting at around 6.5%, 7%. So people are finding a few extra dollars in their pockets now as well. So I feel that people have a little bit of income to put towards a property. And then thirdly, you could probably tell me better than anybody, we're starting to see people refinance and having a few extra dollars available there. So, people are starting to be able to afford properties at a slightly higher price point.
There's two sides to that. I would say I agree with you. Refinances are happening thick and fast. And
Mhm.
that's because the fixed rate repayment cliff is happening. What is the cliff? It's basically all those people that took out 1, 2, 3 year fixed rates 1, 2, 3 years ago. They're now coming up now. And the bulk of them are coming off between now and September. 50%
Yep.
of them, 888,000 are coming off. And there's over 350 billion coming off fixed. So there's a lot of churn in the market, a lot of opportunity. But I would say on the other side, those lucky enough to release equity, God bless them, well done. There's a lot of people in mortgage prison. And what I
Yep.
mean by mortgage prison is people that refinanced or got into the market when rates were, 1.79, 1.89, and the stretch rate was 3% above that. So it was like 4.5 to 5%. That's what they were stretching the rate on. Now the stretch rate is 8.5 to 9 to 10%, depending on the bank you deal with. So you've got clients that can't go anywhere and or their values drop. So that's the other side of it. There is a bank, just a little plug, that is trying to get people out of lender prison. It may be red. And it may be a dragon, but they have got this 1% buffer policy where they can try and get you out. Refinances are happening thick and fast. What are you seeing in the market when clients come to you and they say, hey, I'm looking for my next investment property? What are you seeing in terms of the stock that you are looking at and what the buyer's agent edge can get?
Well, look, generally what we're seeing is people are looking for, they want to see value. So they want to see what capital growth they can get in the short term. So 2, 3 years. And then of the investors that I've dealt with, sort of, I want to say 3/4 of them are looking for something as close to cash flow neutral as possible. So where either rental income or tax advantages can get them to a neutral cash flow. Because I don't look, even though that they're looking to invest, they don't have as much ongoing cash flow that they're able to put towards the property. So
Correct.
they are investing for the future, but with cash flow conscious in mind.
Yeah. Yeah. Good point. Good point. And you probably get this question all the time. I get clients asking me, do you think the rates are going down? That's not their voice, but that's, that question I get all the time. And I say, look, my crystal ball is broken. I'm going to put it to you, Gianni, as one of my legal friends. I'm going to put it to you. Is now a great time to buy?
Look, it's always a great time to buy. There is always a market for somebody, especially investors. You just have to see where the demand is. And there are areas that we've been talking a lot in the last sort of 6 months or so about the rental vacancy crisis. Like there is ultra demand for investors to make rental properties available. All you have to do is find out where the shortest vacancy area is, and that will be where your demand hotspot is. Look, the other thing as well, people are a lot more cost conscious in terms of cash flow. I've mentioned it's getting harder and harder to find cash flow positive property. So it's going to take you a lot longer to find that perfect investment property as well. So the other thing I would have to say is, be patient as well. If you're not going to go through a buyer's agent, it's going to take you a lot longer because you don't have that full-time resource to find you that investment property. So look, in terms of the next sort of few months, I think we'll see a little bit more property come onto the market, and you want to be in there. You want to be first in, best dressed, because you don't want to sort of wait until those properties come onto the market to get your act together and buy. You want to sort of be, at least have your foot in the door prior to those properties come on the market. And I feel those properties are going to come from people that sit in that window, that 3-month window that you mentioned, that said, you know what, I really can't afford this property, or it's going to detriment my lifestyle too much. I'm going to sell. And therefore, people might be able to pick up a reasonable deal in those cases.
Good points. Cogent wisdom there, as always, Gianni. And my next question relates to the stamp duty. One of my colleagues in LHL, Robin Suarez, who's a legend at Inside Sales, just sent to the team that there's it's just been released, the official revenue New South Wales link to the stamp duty changes that are coming 1st of July. And what it means is that if you are buying a new home for at less than 800,000 in New South Wales, full exemption on stamp duty. Now, the current exemption is 650. What do you think that is going to do to the market by upping it from 650 to 800,000 and scrapping this land tax that they were proposing?
Yeah, look, I think it's going to change the dynamics of people that enter into the market. So look, I know personally in Sydney, you're hard pressed to find something under 650, and even more so 800. Predominantly you're going to buy a unit. Okay, under 800, you're going to be hard pressed to find a house, sort of thing. So the likelihood is going to change the dynamic of the market. Everybody's going to be going for sort of units under 800,000. Now, that could mean that next bracket between 650 and 800 has a little bit of a price jump, because people are going to say, well, you're a first home buyer. I know that you've got an extra $15,000, $20,000 now that you don't have to pay stamp duty at that point. Okay, therefore you might see a jump in that price bracket for units or houses in that bracket. The other thing is the units that were valued up to 1.5 with the previous structure of the annual land tax, they might see a bit of a decline, because we know that first home buyers are no longer from 1st of July, they're no longer going to be eligible for the annual land tax. So rather than paying a few $100s a year, or $400 or $500 a year for annual land tax, they have to pay the full stamp duty at a unit at 1.5 million. Because we know the annual land tax was based on the land value. That it was a formula based on the land value.
Yes. And it was the question of what happens every year if your land goes up, and who values that,
Yeah, that's right. So the comparisons that they were drawing is like a 2-bedroom unit in Coogee for $1.5 million versus a 3-bedroom house in Newcastle. And there were the comparisons that they were drawing, like the stamp duty versus annual land tax. But now we know that those smaller land value homes at the higher price bracket, first home buyers are not going to be eligible for those under the annual land tax. So they're not. There's going to be less of the market looking for those type of properties.
It's a good point. And what I would say, this powerhouse, we're 15 minutes in, 16 minutes now. It's now 4:15, 4:16 in Sydney on Wednesday, the 7th of June. If you've got any burning questions, we're streaming live right now. This is live. Hello. On LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook. Put them in the comments and we'll shout you out on the show. And if it's anything more personal, I'm sure Gianni would welcome a cheeky DM on the LinkedIn, YouTube, or Facebook. Now, what is your favorite property type and area to buy in, Gianni, without giving away the secret sauce?
Look, I've been looking a lot lately over the last sort of year or so, regional New South Wales, with the change in government. I'm not so sure at this stage, but prior, there were a lot of infrastructure projects that were proposed around regional New South Wales that would have meant a lot of jobs would have gone into those regional areas, those regional hubs. And as a result of jobs and infrastructure, you're going to see a lot more intrastate and interstate migration into those areas. And therefore, there's going to be a demand for housing. Now, we've already seen over the sort of last 6 to 12 months a little bit of growth in those areas. And for that reason, because you can get relatively cheap house and land, it's good access to capital growth and a good lifestyle as well for people to live in. For that reason, that's the sort of areas that I've been looking at purely from a capital growth perspective. Now, if you can fund the sort of deficit amount, then I'd probably suggest look a little bit deeper into those areas and see if it suits your financial situation.
Oh, I love that. There's a very financial planner way of saying it, or an accountant or a broker. Always got to read the T's and C's there.
That's right.
What are clients coming to you asking for in the current market? Why are they reaching out to yourself as a buyer's agent, Gianni?
Look, my last sort of 6 or 7 clients it's been 50-50 split between investor and owner occupied.
Yes.
With owner occupied, it's been, hey Gianni, I've sold my house and I've got 12 weeks to find a new house, sort of thing. And they know that they don't have the capacity to sort of look for a house on their own. They've been looking for a few months and have been unable to find things. So they need an literal extra set of hands to go through the market, educate them on what they can buy at certain price points, and access to off-market, pre-market, on-market, and even in some cases post-market property listings. That's the owner-occupied side. With the investor side, last 3 out of 4 are cash flow neutral or cash flow positive investors. And they're looking for the sort of research and due diligence behind investing. So what we want to know is where the sort of cash flow neutral, cash flow positive areas are, and how we can sort of get into there and at which price point we can get into them with. Because again, people are looking to invest, but they don't necessarily want to put the cash flow towards the deficit, funding the deficit for those investment properties.
Good point. And a lot of my clients ask me, and I'm not a financial planner, so I say you got to speak to your accountant about this. What's best for you? Interest only or principal and interest on investment? Which way do you like to sway and lead your clients down if they ask you?
Yeah, look, first thing I say is speak to the financial planner. But look, I spent 12 years working in the financial planning industry. I know where my role stops and where I need to hand over to a financial planner. But what I ask them to consider is their cash flow, their goals, and the strategy that they're looking to implement here. So let's say, for example, you're
Yes.
looking to build equity, then we might say, okay, pay principal and interest too, because you're going to be increasing equity exponentially. So you're bringing down the debt while the capital value of your house increases as well. If you're looking to maybe pay off your mortgage, your non-deductible debt, then essentially you want to maximize your tax deductible debt and fund your excess cash flow to paying off your non-deductible debt, your mortgage. So there's a lot of considerations, your tax position, your goals, your strategy. There's a handful of considerations, but what I would say is, as a caveat, my T's and C's, speak to a financial planner, speak to an accountant about how it affects your specific personal financial situation and your tax position as well.
Good point. Good points there. And obviously, we're coming towards the end of the stream, but I wanted to get a couple of bonus questions in. I'm someone who's looking to either upgrade my owner occupied or dip their toe into the investment market. I always hear because we do pre-approvals, right? And they last for 90 days. Someone says, I'm going to just do it myself. I said, of course, Mrs. Prospect, go and do it yourself. Do it yourself, Mr. Lawyer. And let me know how it goes. And then at the end of the 90 days, we'll see if we need help. Usually, if they're very time sensitive, they like how many weekend outings can they do? It's 4, 8, 12. How many times are they going to see a successful property? Probably 6 out of those. And they're probably most likely going to be outbid. So if they've got the extra cash, what do you usually say to people if they're considering using a buyer's agent as to the pros of actually engaging one?
Well, look, if they plan on doing it themselves or they're looking at using a buyer's agent, what I always tell people is I don't decide where we buy property for investors specifically. I say that we only make data-driven decisions. We only let data decide where we buy the property. So
Wow.
essentially,
Okay.
we use what your goals are, what your strategy you're looking to achieve, and then we let data decide where we buy the property. The second tip I would sort of say is do your due diligence. So,
Yes.
you need to make sure that the property is structurally sound and that the deal is structurally sound as well, that the legal aspects of the property is structurally sound. So that's where a lot of your legal clients can come into play as well, especially your
Of
property
course.
lawyers. Uh,
Absolutely.
and then the last tip I would say is remove emotion as much as you can. So a lot of people I sort of speak to, they say, I have an investment property. It was my former principal residence. I have an investment property. It's a holiday house. And the reason why they purchase these investment properties, or the reason why they do want to purchase these investment properties, is because of emotional reasons. Okay. I even tell people, look, these really aren't investment properties. You purchase them for a different purpose. You purchased it to holiday, and you purchased it because you either lived in it or one day you want to live in it. They're not really investment properties. So that's why I sort of say when investing in property, remove emotion and confirmation bias, emotional bias from the process as much as possible.
Makes sense. Makes sense. What do you think about AI? Is it going to change the game for buyers agents and the way we buy property?
I think AI is a tool and it's just dependent on how we use it. Okay, like anything, like money, a car, a hammer, AI is another tool in our arsenal. And I think it's only going to make things more efficient and productive for buyers agents and people alike, because real estate is a game of human emotion and it's run by humans. There's always going to be that human aspect in it. Okay, but at the end of the day, we can add that extra tool to our arsenal, and that's AI, whatever way, shape, or form that looks like in the future.
Very good. Very good. And what is something you would have liked to have known as a young investor when you were 18 years old that you now know now and you tell your clients all the time? What is that one thing that you just wish you knew?
Yeah, look, that's how to read the data, how to do a proper cash flow assessment, how to understand where those high pressure locations are. My first property was, again, I was going to live there. I made the mistake of buying under emotional bias, like, oh, my wife and I are going to live here and it's a good investment. And then even then, I sold under emotional bias as well because I thought, oh, I don't know if I can handle the stress of having two properties. So, I sold and bought. So I sort of think, well, make data-driven decisions, read the data, understand your cash flow, and make it a little bit less emotional investing, because we just want to have pragmatic process to achieve a human goal, an emotional goal. So keep the goal emotional, but your process needs to be as emotionless as possible.
Absolutely, absolutely. And when it comes to negotiating, I usually find that real estate agent and lawyers, my clients, don't really mix. What would you say the number one tip to negotiation is that you use day to day as your role? Because that's basically what you take out of the mix for people. You negotiate on their behalf. What's your thing that you find works in your conversations with these agents and vendors?
Yeah, look, an evidence-based approach is always best. So, look, whenever we're going into a negotiation, a sales agent's going to say to you, "Or how do you justify that offer that you're raising?" Sort of thing. $1 million. Well, how do you justify that, or why are you lowballing? Then you can bring a lot of evidence. You can do the building and pest inspection to say to the quality of the property. You can use comparable sales. You can use price per square meter to justify why you're offering this offer. And then that way you can sort of bring the sales agent and the vendor along the journey as to how you arrived at that particular conclusion. They could turn around and say you're wrong, but at the end of the day, like you've conducted an evidence-based approach to come at your offer, and then you can really justify it as well.
Makes sense. Makes sense. And final question, my friend. You got someone saying, I want to invest, but I don't know whether to go owner occupied and maybe compromise and move out into the suburbs because,
Mhm.
I'm only limited by my borrowing power and my cash. Or do I live with family or rent vest? What do you say to those kind of questions?
Yeah, look, again, they're emotional goals, and people really need to understand, well, what their goals are and work their way backwards from it. So I say, well, if you could picture yourself in 5 years, 10 years, what would that be? Okay. Would that be to have an investment property portfolio, or would that be to have a dream home? And work your way backwards from there. What are the steps that we need to achieve that particular outcome? And if it means, yeah, I want an investment property portfolio, well, then you got to suck it up and live it with your parents and rent vest or something like that. Or if it means that you want a nice house in the suburbs, then you're going to have to move it out a little bit more. You want to have your mortgage paid off, or you want to have a more reasonable mortgage, then you're going to have to move out a little bit further from the city. So understand what your goal is and work your way backwards from there. And that's the only way that you're going to achieve. A lot of people sort of say, well, this is the position that I'm in now. How do I get forward? Well, go to the end and work your way backwards to where you are. Because once you understand both the start and the end points, that's how you can really map your journey.
Very good point. Begin with the end in mind. Jim Rohn. Let's go.
Yeah.
Gianni, it's been an absolute pleasure, my friend. Thank you for coming on. Where can people find you? Where are you hanging out the most?
Look, LinkedIn is my jam. Please reach out to me on LinkedIn. Otherwise, you can reach me on my mobile, 0404 867 996. I'm on all the other social media channels as well, but LinkedIn is the best.
Fantastic. Thanks, Gianni, for joining, my friend. It's been an absolute pleasure, sir.
My pleasure. Thank you, Cullen.
Thanks so much, Gianni. And if you are a legend of lending for lawyers, please reach out. More than happy to have you on the show. We come out every Wednesday, speaking to a legend on lending. But thank you for joining the Lawyer Lending Live show. And be sure to watch us. We're going to be coming out on Apple, Spotify, and wherever you get your podcasts very soon, and uploading the last 20 episodes. We'll try and do it every couple of days, space it out. But this will be a different show to the Law Live show where we interview legal legends. So hopefully you'll get value from this. Bye for now, everyone.